Hello everyone and happy Wednesday. Kisha is going to be joining us soon, and we're going to be talking all about the owner build process of ADUs, meaning you build it yourself rather than going through a general contractor. Kisha has built 5 herself, and I'm super excited for her to come on and just share everything she's learned. Oh, here she is. Perfect. Right on time. All right, I'm going to send you. Accept it, and it should add you in. Hello.
Hi, Miranda. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. It's a little low on my end, but I'm sure that's me. Okay, got it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited to have you on today. How's your day been so far?
Good. It's such a beautiful day. It's nice to have the change of weather. Oh my God. So over winter.
Seriously, I'm like, as soon as I woke up, I was like, yes, finally. And by the way, I love the background with the plants and everything. That's so cute.
Thank you. My husband is working from home now, so my home office is gone, and I have to find a little niche somewhere to set up whenever I do these calls.
Well, it looks like you found a good one because it looks super cute in there. I just have a plain old wall with pictures of my dog Taco.
Aww.
I need to put up some more decorations or something.
Taco's cute. Taco's holding it down for us.
That's true. Well, thanks for coming on. And did you want to just introduce yourself? Start off with telling us a little bit about how and why you got into ADU builds?
Of course. So I'm super excited to be here. This is one of the things I love talking about more than anything. And partly because of the impact it's had on our families' lives. When we had our kids super young, and when our kids started to go off to college, and 2 of the 3 got really sick, we were in a bind, and we realized we just didn't have the money to help them or take care of them, support them the way that we needed to. We were basically living, check to check, and the only thing we had was our house. And I had spent years as kind of a stay-at-home mom and a habitat restoration. So I worked, but not, it was like part-time work, and I really loved what I did, but I just didn't make that much money. So I would always search how to make money from home. And the one thing that always came up was rent your house out. And I was like, well, we live here. We can't rent it out. we need to be here. And then at some point you started to hear about ADUs. And instantly when I heard about it, I started listening to all the podcasts, anything about, renting, becoming a landlord. And I just learned as much as I could. And when I saw the opportunity, my sister was coming back from China, and she needed a place to stay, and she couldn't afford the Bay Area. I was like, no, I think we can turn this garage into an ADU. So when we started, it wasn't because we were going to rent it to people, but it was kind of in the back of my mind, okay, this is something, people need housing. This is a way out for us. And slowly it just gained momentum, and we started to see whoa, no, people really will pay for these, single car garage ADUs,
Right.
And that's how we got started.
Wow, that's amazing. And so your first one, how big was the first one that you did?
That one's about 250. I go back and forth. You'll hear me sometimes say 255. It's 250 or 255. We have 2 of them, and they're just single car garages, and that's so it's 5 feet difference, but that's how big it is.
Wow. And what does your portfolio look like now?
We have 2 single family homes, and one operates like a triplex because it has 2 ADUs, one at 150 square feet and one at the 250. And then the second single family home acts like a fourplex because it has 3 ADUs, one 255, one at 441, and one at 588.
Wow. You guys hear that? She literally turned 2 single family homes into a triplex and a fourplex. That's insane.
It's insane. And the fourplex, we did that in 2.5 years. So that was kind of the insane. If I were going to do this again, I would tell a person to build the garage and then take a break, but that's kind of not how we operate. So we just like pushed and we're exhausted, but excited. Like we learned a lot, and that was part of our goal was the quicker you can do it because of the money that you're putting out. In our case, it works better that we just pushed through and got done as quick as possible. We had some other goals that we needed to get to.
Yeah, like, wow. I mean, I feel like, I mean, that can completely change a person's life. I mean, especially here in California, which is like unheard of for you to be able to do that. And so from like, so you said the fourplex took 2.5 years. What about the first, like the very, very first one? What was your timeline? How long did it take you just to complete the first one?
I'd say that garage was the first. So the garage was just a garage that we didn't even park our cars in. It was a single car garage. And that was like in 2017, before you even heard the term ADU. So we were just thinking like a garage studio conversion, just, you know, like old school in-law unit, right? Yeah. That probably took us, and it was so long ago, and we didn't intend to do what we've done with it. So I'm going to say maybe 6 to 8 months in there. And that was just Noah and I, you know, when we're not with the kids, when we're not at work, building this ADU, which at that time, we're older. We weren't on the internet really, so we weren't using the internet to like surf stuff. We had seen a couple of tiny houses, but we were just kind of going rogue, just like, oh yeah, I think this works here. Like we had no idea what actually we were doing. Although my husband has 25 years of construction experience, so he's been in construction. So on that part we were okay, but in terms of design, we just thought of what would my sister want, and that's what we did. And then the second. We called it the tiny house, but it's actually an ADU. So don't mix that up, but it is an ADU. The second one was our kids' like playroom. So we had never intended for that to happen. But once we had the intention to convert it to an ADU, that probably took us something like 4 months, because we had also planned a trip at the end of that 4 months, and we had to have it rented before we left because we didn't have the money.
Motivation right there. Put yourself on a timeline. That's so funny. I did like the same thing when we remodeled our kitchen, DIY everything. It was our first DIY remodel kitchen. DIY anything. And I planned a Christmas party, a housewarming Christmas party before we even started the remodel. So I gave us like that timeline, and oh my gosh, does that just make you work 10 times harder?
Especially a remodel, like, and they're coming to dinner at your party. So I can only imagine your timeline compared, because yours is just like 10x what I was doing. But I mean, it's really that motivation, though. I feel like that like makes you wake up early in the morning, or makes you want to like paint or sand something when you get home from an 8-hour day at your W-2 job. It's like discipline is what keeps you going, but motivation, I mean, if you put yourself on that tight timeline, yes, it's stressful, but I mean, you will see yourself do things that you never thought you could before. I know. How long did the kitchen remodel end up taking you?
3 months. It had to be done.
You really pushed it. I heard something the other day that often the amount of time that you give yourself is the minimum amount of time that it's going to take to get it done. So moving forward, I want to be gentler with us and not push us to the, like, I hurt my back. Like, there are things that I know that we have to be smarter about the way we work. But that saying kind of sticks with me. Like, no, really, if you give yourself a year to complete something, you're going to at least take a year. But if you give yourself like 3 months to get the kitchen done, it's done. I know people living with, half remodeled kitchens, years later.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get to that. Right. Because they never give themselves a hard, no, I'm getting this done now. So that's so true.
Best way to get the job done. Give yourself a timeline, or plan a vacation or a party. Something where you can't change it. Like, it's set in stone, and there's no, oh, I don't think we can get this done. Like, no, we were literally putting on the last of the baseboards the day of the party.
Right? But you made it. We made it. And it's beautiful. I saw pictures. It's amazing.
Thank you. But and so you went from 8 months and won your first ADU to then only 2 years going from a single family home to a fourplex. That is insane. I mean, I just want to give you like a slow clap because that is you I feel like the ADU world almost chose you. It's like you just stumbled upon it, you did what was best, and then you were like, and then you saw it and you're like, oh wait, we're doing something here, and then you just like you ran with it.
Yeah. So in the Bay Area, that 250 square feet garage conversion, that's a studio. When my sister moved on, because she never paid this kind of rent, the first person, I listed it, I checked the market, I looked at everything that was out there, and it came in that the price was $1,500. And as soon as I did that, and I mean, I was still getting hits, and I was like, this is insane. I mean, I actually feel a little bit like, but I had a goal, you know, like I needed, our daughter was in college. She's also got some chronic autoimmune problems. And so I knew like I had this goal that we need to be having this so that we could help her on her end with her rent. Like we're paying for multiple things.
Yeah.
Even in addition to her working hard. So I rented it for $1,500 and no problem. I mean, it wasn't like it was a hard $1,500, a hard sale. Like I had lots of people and lots of people to turn down. Yeah. So once that clicked, you know, oh, this is $1,500. Then from there it was like, no, we have to figure out a way to scale this up a little faster.
Yeah, because that type of cash flow is hard to come by in California. Like, it's not easy here. So when you guys saw that, you were like, oh, yep, this is it.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Right. I've been listening to those podcasts and everyone was like, at least $200 a door, $500 a door. And I was like, whoa, we just went, you know, and then some. And so then our kids had left and they no longer used the playroom. And I was like, well, let's do this playroom. My husband was like, nobody wants the playroom. It's 150 square feet. It's a little bit more than 150 square feet, but by minimal. And I listed it at like 900 and I just got so many inquiries that I had to like, I think I gave it to one woman and she stayed for a year. She was a travel nurse. But after that, I figured that 9 was a little too low for a private unit. Like it's totally private. So I'm competing with like, you know, the 1 bedroom, right? You know, in a house, as opposed to somebody who's renting a studio. So I just upped it to 1,200, and it stays at 1,200, and it consistently stays booked. Wow, at 1,200. Yeah, so which for the Bay Area is still a steal in the Bay Area.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'll move to the Bay Area for that. That kind of rent. Yeah. So we got. Sorry, what was that?
Because I know you do some room rentals. Like, what are the room rentals like? Or are you able to talk about that?
Yeah. So my rooms right now that I'm renting out is one for $800 and one for $850. Okay. But then they also, we've split PG&E because it fluctuates so much. I couldn't include that in the rent. So I was able to, because I mean, when I looked at comps, rooms around here in the Rockland area, we're renting around like $900 and $950. Some even were like $1,100, but those are a little bit bigger rooms and mine are a little bit on the smaller side. So I wanted to go lower, as well as I knew the people who were going to be renting. So it's like I gave them like a little bit of a lower market value rent, but we split PG&E because at the time I didn't know how to calculate that into it, because I mean it fluctuates anywhere from $300 a month to $700 a month. So it was just too much to put a consistent number on every month. But once they move out and then I get people like I really 100% don't know, I'll probably just set a standard number rather than splitting the PG&E every month just to be consistent. But so I feel like it ends up being market value when I include the PG&E bill. But yeah, $800 and $850 right now.
And you just brought up a really good point about the size. Like when we're doing these like market comparisons, you have to account for the fact that not everyone's going to have a really small ADU. Mm-hmm. We lean towards smaller ADUs. I don't know if we had more space, if we would up it. Mm-hmm. It's for us, it's like a cost analysis thing. It just turns out that it works for the smaller ADUs for us and our lot size. But when you're pricing it, you have to think about like, am I going up against, especially like in SAC or units, you know, a 1 bedroom is about 500 to 600 square feet on average, or a studio is. So you have to price kind of accordingly. So that's smart. Even with the rooms, we've experienced that here too, because we rent out rooms in our house, and ours is kind of a smaller. The rooms are all smaller, so we have to do the same thing as adjust the price. It seems lower, but it's actually just on par for what they're getting in terms of size, and you want people to feel like they're getting a good deal and not being taken advantage of, right? I don't want to go in like that, right?
Right, because then I feel like that's when you turn anybody like too high of a price can turn any good tenant into a difficult one, because you don't want them to come in and be like, oh, I'm paying this much for this. Like, that's why it's so important to have either market value or just slightly above market value, because I feel like that will make the tenant have realistic expectations of what's going in rather than too high of expectations, and then them being picky about like the small things, you know. And I really love that you touched on it, because that's so important that they feel that they're getting their money's worth in the area and like the space, everything.
Exactly. So that's what we try to do.
And how many rooms are you renting out right now in your main home?
Right now it's just one, but starting April 1st, because we'll be doing more traveling, it'll be 2 rooms. I have had occasion where we've rented all the rooms at the same time. We only have 3, but like if we go on vacation, we'll time it and have all the rooms booked up for a certain amount of time. And it was wild, but we did it. It was wild, but it was well worth it.
Oh my gosh. And so you're going to have 2 rooms plus the 2 ADUs in this house, right?
So the 2 rooms will be rented, and then all 3 ADUs are already rented right now. So when, we passed a final inspection in January, I had already started screening people, which is something I typically do. Before I'm even ready, I'm starting my screening process, and it's posted and listed, might just have a pretty picture that says coming soon, maybe of the area. I'm already on it and interviewing people. So February 1st and February 15th, we had people move in. And so everything's booked. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So then you're going to have a total of 5 tenants.
Yeah.
And are all of those midterm rentals?
Yes, they are all midterm rentals. Right now, I can tell we probably at least half are going to be about 8 months, which is usually our average stay. Even though we call it midterm rentals, we usually have people stay for about 8 months.
Okay. And do you typically see a lot of vacancy, or do you notice any, patterns with that? Like if one ADU has more vacancy than another, or the rooms?
In the Bay Area, not really. And I have to still see with Sacramento. I did notice when I upped the prices in the Sacramento places, it was a little harder to get a tenant. And I felt like this winter was slow. So we've had the studio for a year, but we've also used it to house family, because that's something we do. We're like constantly, checking in with people. Hey, are you going to be in the area? Do you need a place to stay? Or if we have a kid, and they need somewhere to stay, this is the time, you can stay here. That's the kind of thing that we'll kind of leverage the ADU for both the passive income and to support our family. But the studio, I did notice when I bumped it up to $1,450, it had been at $1,300, but it's a furnished studio, but it is 255 square feet. So when I got it, I think it's actually $1,485. That's what I finally had it set at. When I listed it at that price, the inquiries definitely slowed down a little bit. And I couldn't tell if that was just the seasonal kind of a shift, because, it'll have cycles to the season, or if it was my price, or kind of both, but we'll see what happens. So Sacramento is still a little bit of a learning process for us to figure out what is, where's the right price at. Our size is kind of an issue, but almost anything that's an issue you can address with pricing.
Yeah. Right. I love that. And how much percentage wise do you normally put away for like vacancy, maintenance, CapEx?
So I will have to admit that we have Noah's W-2 income. We have the passive income from the Bay Area. And so we kind of are still working on, and I'm going to say we're working on how we develop our business financing, how we set that aside. Yeah. There's always cash coming in. So we're still just working on that, how much we put it.
Separating it.
Yes. Okay. Yes. There's a lot of cash coming in, and we have to get better at how we set it up. So I'm interviewing accountants right now and CPAs right now. It's hard to build a house and take care of the other stuff. So that is one of the weaknesses of being like anything DIY, when you don't, hire out, then you have that responsibility that something else is getting neglected. And for us, it is actually like our setup for the finance part. Everybody gets paid, everything gets done correctly, but we would like to operate a little bit smoother, like a business, and less hands-on. And right now, it's all hands-on. We, either Noah or myself handle everything.
Yeah. I've already talked to you about the cleaning service.
Yes. Even the cleaning, which after I talked to you, I found someone on TaskRabbit. And yes, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. My back hurts because it's forced me to hire people to do stuff that I wouldn't. We're just so like controlled. Like I'm so like, in between stays, I paint the baseboards. Like I'll paint in the windowsill with just white, which is, I don't know if that's like industry standard, but it's definitely something that I do.
You need to be considered like a super host.
So it's something that I do. So I have to kind of relinquish some of that control.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you see give yourself more time to build?
Yes.
And rather than focusing on the smaller tasks that other people can do. Your time is too valuable to be spending on these little tasks when you need to be out there building more ADUs or building like your company and your business.
Right. So I generated a list for the things for her to do. And oh my God, that list was just crazy. And I had to be like, okay, lower the expectations here. She's going to do a great job cleaning. And she did. Thank God I'm here. So right now I'm learning how to like kind of supervise her and then work with her on what I need. And it was great. It wasn't the person you recommended, but I might need her too. It was good. So just like relinquish it. I didn't hurt my back and the places got clean.
Okay, good. Well, not good that you hurt your back, but good that it got clean. And I'm glad that you're, stepping out of your comfort zone and getting help because you deserve it, all your hard work. And honestly, I feel like the best thing too with house cleaners is that just if you find someone who's really good at communication and responding to your needs, like if it's okay if they do something wrong, but if you communicate to them and then they do a better job next time, that's the person you want to keep. Right, because anyone little things your way always the first time, but then as long as they do it right the second time or to your standards the second time, then that's how you know like, okay, this is a team that I can build on, that you can like water and nourish and grow into like the team that you want, like your ideal team one day. Because no one's going to start out that way. And I love that you have like those expectations of, training them and taking the time to really just grow them.
Right. That was a great tip. It came from you because I was like, how am I going to find this person that does me? And then you were like, okay, you just tell them what you need and keep working with them. So that was good.
I'm glad I could help. We actually do have a question in the comment. She says, she's asking, so with no construction background, will somebody, like just an average person, need to hire out, or do you have any recommendations on certain things that you would recommend them hiring out for?
Yes. So, I'm torn when you ask that question because the savings from a DIY build is just astronomical. Like you cut the cost in half, but there's always that chance that you'll start the project and you'll get in too deep and not be able to complete it. That happens, right? A lot. We see that in renovation. We see it in ADUs. So I would say even without a construction background, you could do it, build you a team, make sure you learn as much as you can, but be prepared that there will be some things that you need to hire out, and definitely you need to have professional advice. So even though Noah has 25 years in construction, every step of the way, he is like really diving in deep on any aspect. So that is the danger for a homeowner who is working a full-time job or running their home. And you have to also get really knowledgeable about plumbing, electrical. You have to get knowledgeable about pricing supplies. So that's where the builders, that's what you're paying them for, is because they already have that knowledge and they've been doing it. So I am right now meeting with builders and try to develop relationships with them so I can get a better understanding or which ones in the area are the best to hire out to if someone asks me a question like that, and who can I recommend? Because I do think it's a valid question. If you don't have the experience, it is, you know, precarious to like navigate building your own ADU, but not impossible. I don't want to say it's impossible at all. It's possible. Just know that there's a lot of work that goes into it on the back end, not even building, right? Just education part.
Now, can someone now or maybe in the near future schedule like a paid consultation call with you to get like advice on these types of things?
Yes. And I don't have a set scale yet because I just started. I've done 2 consultations with people to set up their midterm rentals. One had an ADU, so I just helped him through the process. And we still, that was like 6 months ago, and we still maintain a really good relationship, and I check in with him every now and then. But yeah, more than happy, you know, get my contact information, reach out to me, and I'd love to help you in whatever way, even if it's, you know, just recommending go to this supplier or something, because we learned a lot about Sacramento, this area's supply. And so some things that you want to purchase, Home Depot isn't going to be your best place to purchase them. Like my husband went to Wayside Lumber for all his lumber. We went to another supplier for our insulation, things like that. It was cheaper, and also the service was different, right? So we had really great service. Not that Home Depot can't be great service, but we got really great service from those smaller companies here that were really helpful.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you're building relationships with them too, because you know, if they're great and they're competitive pricing, it's like you're gonna want to use them again. So why not like just grow that relationship and eventually be able to help others by giving them those recommendations. I love that you're building that list.
Thank you. Doing
it.
Excited.
You're growing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know for sure that we wouldn't. We want to do this again. I don't know when. Like, what's the time frame? And we'll likely do it ourselves again too. But there are things that we may decide in the future to hire out, and that's why I also want to have those relationships for us, because there are things that we won't want to embark on again, like the electrical. I think we're going to pass on the electrical. We did it. Noah did it this time, and he did a great job. That brings me to like one of the words of caution. Can I do that now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the words of caution is with electrical. So even though you put your plans in with the city of Sacramento, and they approve you, and they approved us to build 3 ADUs, right? All of those ADUs are pulling power. SMUD only allows us to have 400 amps on one lot, including our main property. So now when you're going to calculate loads, like what the amount of energy that's being used, and purchase your appliances, you need to make sure that you stay within that 400 amps. Which when we found that out, we were like, wait, I don't understand. You know, we didn't see that coming. That was like something I didn't even get. Like we talked to SMUD, they said, yes, it's okay. And then we hear this little thing about 400 amps, and I was like, how are we going to make that with the main house? So that took a little time to figure out. It was a little stressful because at that point we're, you know, the structure's back there. It's being built. You know, I think framing was up, but we could see the problem coming, like, oh no, what are we going to do? But thankfully my husband just kept that piece where you got to be persistent. He kept working it, and then I go and look for appliances that fit within what he needed. And that's how he figured it out.
Wow. And who did you figure out like the 400 amps from? Like, because I'm wondering, I wonder if that's like different per city or if that's just like a universal number. You know,
I bet that it's different everywhere. Like even, or did you say you were on PG&E?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm sure it's different for PG&E, and it's probably different with SMUD too. Like, so and I would think we're R2, so we just assumed as an R2 lot that we little, you know, higher amps, but that never transpired, and we did it. So I wonder if it also would it matter, like in our neighborhood, it's called the transitional housing, like mixed density. There are like 12 unit apartment buildings, like smaller ones. They're not using, you know, 400 amps. So I just wonder if it depends on what your property, the lot is zoned as at all. Yeah. But I don't know for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Because, yeah, I was like thinking the same thing, like, no way an apartment building is running 400 amps.
Right.
Okay, but it's definitely such a great question to ask, though. So definitely need to put that on your guys' list to ask how much amps is allowed and what your zoning is. And I feel like there's so much information to kind of organize it all in a way. What ADU do you want to focus on? And maybe we can like take everyone through the phases of that ADU, and then we can just kind of go from there. Because I feel like I could ask you a million questions about all these ADUs, and there's so much, but what's one that you want to like walk us through the process with?
We can start with the garage because I actually think that's going to be the most accessible for most people. So if you're doing, the question earlier was about a DIY build, that's going to be more closely aligned with a renovation. Like, you know, like you're adding a kitchen and a bathroom, but a lot of the things, you already have the structure. It's just like a renovation, except you're going to get a separate address and go through the city for that part. Yeah. So I like going through the garage one, and I'll try to recall as much as possible about that build.
Okay. Perfect. So starting with the garage, what's the first thing that people need to do when they decide to convert the garage? What's phase one?
I would say your very first step is to figure out what your use will be. So get clear about how you'll be using the space. Is it going to be used as a rental solely? Is it going to be used for family? That'll help you kind of decide a few things as you move forward. In particular, I would pay special attention to soundproofing the garage space between you and the primary residence and the ADU that you're building. So that's why I always say go ahead and try to figure out first what you're going to be using it for.
Okay. And is this the phase where, so you figure out what you want to use it for, whether it's for family or rental, and then do you have to meet with a designer to go over everything? And I know that doesn't need to be stamped, but because you already have the walls, but do you still need to meet with a designer?
So next step, I would, but during this, when you're figuring out what you're going to use it for, I would talk to someone at the building department or permits at wherever your city is, contact them, see what's in place, kind of get an idea for how familiar they are with ADUs. And also during the same step where you're deciding how you're going to use your ADU, learn as much as you can, because you'll inevitably talk to somebody at the city who will not have the right information, and you just need to be clear about it every step of the way. We had people say that we had to have parking for the studio. In our case, we did not. But if I didn't know that, that could have stopped us in our tracks, because there was really no room for us to add parking, right? So we had to really know what we were talking about when we went to them on some level. And everyone would, I have to give SAC credit. Amazing building department to work with. Very helpful every step of the way. So if you're in Sacramento, you're in for a treat, because I don't think every city is going to be like that, but SAC is.
Okay. And what are some resources you would recommend that people should look up to learn like these things?
Right. So the ADU Resource Center for SAC, every other city, San Mateo County has one that's really good. Look at all those Casita Coalition, and maybe we can put this in the comment section when we post the live. Casita Coalition, they actually are an advocacy organization, and if you ever have a problem, you could email them. They will review ordinances, because sometimes cities or counties will put out an ordinance that counters what the state says, and the state's ordinance, of course, legislation trumps that city's, but you might need help navigating that process. So the Casita Coalition is someone that you would contact. There's a few others, and I don't remember their exact names, so I'll just make sure that when you put the live up, I send that over to you.
And how do you spell that? Casita Coalition?
Yeah, like a casita, like CASITA Coalition.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. Okay. And then any like content creators or YouTubers that like post things like that, like great information that people should start following or listening to? Do you recommend anyone like that?
Yeah. So in addition to myself, you want to follow Ryan. He does, I think his page it might be How to ADU. He's at least on YouTube as How to ADU. And if you find him on YouTube, then you'd be able to find him also on Instagram because you get his information. And the other one is Stephanie Sales Homes. And she is kind of like someone I really look up to. She's a woman and she's in the ADU sphere and knows a lot. She's in SoCal, but she does a lot of education and she talks to a lot of people on her podcast about ADUs, not just in SoCal, everywhere. So she's a really good person. And her Instagram handle, I think, is Stephanie Sales Homes or Steph Sales Homes. We'll put that in there too.
Okay. Perfect. And looking back when you were going through all of these ADUs, is there any common mistake that people make during this first phase? Like other than just not being educated enough to know when they're getting the wrong information?
I think that's a big part of it. And that piece could actually stop you from proceeding with your project, right? So you get some wrong information and then you don't keep going. That's one. The next phase, when you're hiring your team, you're bringing in your designer. And, technically you don't always need a designer, but if you're hiring a designer, because you got to submit plans for the whole building, your primary residence and the ADU, right?
Oh.
Yes, because you don't just submit the plans for the ADU, so you got to submit plans for both of them, so they got to draw that up. You really do want to work with an experienced designer who works on ADUs. Every step of the way, if you ever hire anyone, it's important to have a person that does ADUs. I mean, we interviewed electricians who hadn't ever worked on an ADU, and some of the information they gave us, had we, believed them, that also could have stopped us. Somebody was like, this is going to cost $30,000. Well, ADUs, the reason why they're so popular and why California is pushing them is because it's easier to build, right? They're giving us this kind of less expensive version of the same house, same safety standards, but they are removing some of the things that were hindering us in the first place from building additional housing. So that's all I would say. Every step of the way, if you pull in someone, if you hire a professional, just make sure that they are specifically like they've worked on ADUs, which isn't always going to be the easiest, but if you follow Steph Sales or myself, we definitely are Ryan. We all try to share those people when we find them that are out there. And there's a lot right now because it's so popular. Builders are caught on it.
Yes. So phase 2, you said, is all about building your team.
Building a knowledgeable team. Even if that means that if you're a DIY builder, my husband's calling his friends. He is reaching out to people that he knows has done other remodeling projects, and he's saying, hey, what did you do here? What's this going on? And so even if you're a DIY person, then start reaching out to people, and it's not necessarily that you need them to do the work. You just need their advice. You need to be speaking with them. I mean, we talked about this the other day. Our lives were just consumed with constant conversations about a build or another, something related to this. So that's kind of what you have to do, is just be consumed with it in order to get through the process.
Yeah, and I feel like especially nowadays, because there's more resources out there now than ever, it's like, don't be afraid to go out and even pay for a consultation with someone who's done this before, because even paying for a phone call consultation to go over things that you're not sure of is still going to be cheaper than going the general contractor route. So don't be afraid to spend, a couple hundred here and there, because that's still going to save you thousands in the long run if you're trying to do it yourself.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, we have a question. As a future ADU owner builder, how do you properly identify an ADU subcontractor, like plumber, electrician, that is able to do the job versus one that thinks they could do it?
That's a good question. My husband asks them a lot of questions. He's, just chatting with them constantly about what they do, what he wants to do. You're just going to try to build a rapport. It's like anything else. You kind of have to give them smaller jobs and test them out in some way, right? So see if they can do something little. Can they take direction from you? If you say, no, I want it done like this, or are they going to kind of argue? You want their knowledge, right? You want them to give you whatever knowledge they have, but you also want to be able to know that they can work with you and it could be collaborative, right? So that's what I would advise is, one, give them a smaller job to do and see if they can handle it, and then have lots of conversations with them, and also see if you two can have a collaborative relationship. Because that's, to me, also just like in general as a character, if I can't collaborate with you, then it kind of gives me like a red flag. Like, okay, that's a red flag. You're not able to like work. It's not a give and take kind of relationship. Right. Then that would be one of my suggestions for working with hiring people to see if they can do the job.
Okay. Now, other than a designer, is there anyone else you need on your team before you even start construction, or is that more of a you kind of get as you go?
Yeah. What's the right way to do it? The right way is to know who's on your team, right? The hard part is that, especially, there was times, this was one of the things that tripped us up. There were times when we were ready to go, but we were going to hire something out, and people were just so busy, right? So construction, especially right now with ADUs and in general, is booming in Sacramento and in the Bay. So when you go to ask for, hire someone, if you're not ready to go, and when you are ready to go, they might not be ready to go, right? They might have other jobs. So build your team, and typically my husband will interview 3 to 4 people, and kind of, eliminates 2 of them, usually, and then he'll have 1 or 2 that the one is the one he really wants to work with, and the second one is like, okay, if I can't get the one I want, I'll work with that one. That's what he tries to do.
That's smart.
Yeah, because you just don't know about their schedules. But sometimes you just have to wait. Like, our foundation guy for the ADU duplex, he spoke to this guy. He was the best guy. Gave him, a reasonable price. It wasn't the lowest price, but it was the reasonable. But more importantly, he was super knowledgeable, and he was easy to work with. And so my husband, we had to wait a little bit. That was a part of a delay that we had, because we had to wait for him to be available to work with us. So that's just a part of the process, though.
Yeah, because I feel like a certain amount of flexibility is required, because even if you have a timeline, anything can throw that timeline off by a few weeks, if not a month or 2. And so it's like, you can plan, okay, we're going to do concrete this month, and we're going to do, framing this month. But in reality, it's like, you can't set a date until probably a couple weeks out, if that. Because even materials can back you up.
Right. So you want to get a timeline from, I heard someone else speak about a timeline before. You want to get a timeline. That's just I want to know that you're thinking critically. In my opinion, that's what I need a timeline for. But when you talk about delays, like with this foundation, we had our permits in December, but remember, we had the wettest winter ever. And we just could not get this clay, this soil to dry out enough. And it just kept pushing our start date. Like, even once the foundation guy was ready, we had to keep pushing the start date, which like kind of trickled down into everything. We thought we would be done in August. Then in August, we decided, we should take a break and enjoy being in Northern California. Like all these little things got pushed because we didn't start when we thought we were going to be able to start. So that would be some delays as owner builders is like going to be a really big thing, just because stuff comes up and you're trying to learn and get the equipment in, get your supplies in while you're also building. So you're doing all of these things that a contractor would do, but you're also like managing your home, right? Building, going to work. So all of those things are happening at the same time.
Yeah, multitasking at its finest. I can only imagine you juggling mom life with work life, with ADU builds. Oh my gosh. Super mom over there.
Thank you.
And okay, is it truly worth to work with an ADU builder that can do A to Z, or is the cost truly worth it?
I'm going to say, if you feel confident that you can get this done, nothing beats an owner builder in terms of savings, what you're going to save in the build. We built a 1,029 square feet ADU duplex for under $200,000. There's just no builder that can beat that price. It just won't. Insane. It's an insane savings, and it was stressful. And my husband is like, he's going to take off. We're going to do some recharging of his soul now. But the savings are there. Like, there's no way to argue that. And I wouldn't expect a builder. I mean, a builder has other expenses. They have a crew to take care of. I get why those prices aren't realistic. But for an owner builder who's capable, the savings just can't be matched.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that at least saved you, I mean, over $100,000. I mean, there is no duplex in Sacramento selling for less than $200,000. So even if you're like building from the ground up as a new build and you're going through a general contractor, I mean, they're still going to charge you, I feel like, an arm and a leg for that, right, because it's such a desirable location.
Right. That's true.
And I feel like even though you are doing an owner build, it's still, even if you do, like, when you don't have to do everything DIY. Like, obviously, like you said, there's certain things that you can't do, like electrical and like sometimes plumbing. So as long as we build your team, find your designer if you're using one, get a timeline going, get your core group of things that you know you absolutely can't do DIY, get those quotes and have them ready. And then that way, at least when the time comes, you have some. I mean, there might be some other things in there that pop up that you don't know that you might need to find someone to do along the way. But I feel like as long as you have your core ready to go, I feel like that'll help with the delays as much as possible, because I just got a quote for a fence and they're like 9 weeks out. I was like, oh, that was just for a fence. So I can't imagine like what all like these other subcontractors are booking out against.
Yeah, and if you're a DIY builder, if you're gonna owner builder, you should be talking to people all the time. Like, my husband's in the line at Home Depot talking to some guy who looks like, just making small talk, because he's always looking for someone in case he does have to hire out people. And there were jobs that we had to hire out for, like the ceiling height is 15 feet at the highest, and at the lowest I think it's 8 feet, but it goes down like this. So there's a really short span where it's 8 feet. It's a big building. And we've done hung sheetrock before. There was no way I was going to be able to hang that sheetrock with him, right? So that had to be hired out. And we didn't start the project knowing who we were going to hire. He stumbled around and was talking to someone and found a guy who was actually building a home who recommended someone else. So he was at work. He talked to somebody and he was like, yeah, you should contact my guy. And then that guy led us to the guy that helped us with the sheetrock. So that's a big part of it too. That's why I always stress, like, just keep, just like how we are networking all the time, that's what you have to do as an owner builder. It has to turn into like this thing where you're building a community around getting this thing built and completed, right? With as much help or that you need, whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So once you have your team, what's the next phase?
Get those drawings done and start submitting to the city. Start working on your drawings. Our drawings for the garage was super easy. I don't think we had a whole bunch of back and forth about it. I'm trying to recall if we did. For the ADU duplex, we had a lot of back and forth. And even still in the end, we missed some stuff that later we had to go back in and resubmit for. Yes.
Oh no, like what?
It was, so that would be another red flag. Something pitfall that you want to pay attention to.
Oh gosh.
I'm obsessed with bright spaces, and I call it an obsession. I actually think it's a legit thing that when you walk into a brand new space, one of the things that as a brand new building, do not build a dark building if you can avoid it. And since it was a brand new building, we had all these other expenses. We cut back on windows, and that means that you have to be strategic about where you place the windows you have. And we kind of miscalculated. We chose to put a window in a certain spot that later it didn't let enough light in because of an oak tree. Oh. So it wasn't just like, it was like all these things that you don't necessarily see when you're looking at this flat drawing. But as the building's getting built, I'm just seeing a really dark space. And I'm like, oh no, I can't live with this dark space. And so we ended up actually adding a solar tube. Usually, that's what I want to say about owner builders. There's usually a solution. It just comes with a price tag, right? So we had to figure out, did we want to just stop, resubmit, and add another window? privacy is really important to us, so those window placements are tricky. Or that we need to add, like look for something else like the solar tube that we ended up going with. So we got some of the light back into the space. But for that build, there were some things that after our drawings were done and we submitted and we got our permits approved, that as it was being built, I was like, whoa, okay, that's not gonna work. And we had to go back and fix it.
What is a solar tube?
Oh, wow. Okay. Solar tube, it's like this tube and it lets in, it's think of it like a skylight, but not like this big expensive skylight. It uses science to like reflect the light from outside like in a bubble, and then the rays kind of like hit back on this tube that's aluminum, and then it diffuses the light in the space so that it's a little brighter, right? It can make a really big difference if done correctly.
That is so cool. And how much does something like that cost?
If I recall correctly, ours was like, we got it on sale. We got two, we put them in both units. Okay. I think it was like $800. It's okay. Not that expensive. You do want to make sure, because you're cutting into the roof, that you know, your roofer is like a trained person, skilled, and knows how to install one properly. So you don't have any leaks.
That was going to be the next question. That's not something you install on your own. It would have to be the person who's putting in the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it is. When I looked into it initially, it could have been a DIY job, but we didn't have the roof on yet. So we just had our roofer deal with it. I stand corrected. We had the roofer go around it, and Noah actually did install the actual solar tube. Oh. So, yes. So we just like put the flashing, there's like a piece that goes around it. That's what the roofer installed. And then Noah came in and set the rest of it up.
Okay. So if you're going to put a solar tube in, that's something you need to do before the roof is in?
You should. You can do it without the roof being, the roof could have already been installed, but if you're already up there, like you should do it at the same time. Then.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense? Did I explain that right? Yeah. Okay.
So then you get your plans, you submit them. What is the first thing you need to do? Is it the framing, the insulation, or what's that first step in the actual like labor part?
Yeah. So if it's a garage conversion, right, you likely have a foundation already. You don't pour another foundation, you just use what you have. Right. In our case, we did, and I'm going to pause for this part. You have a choice sometime if your grade isn't working for waste. So there's a certain grade necessary for waste, and there's a couple of ways around it. If you decide one route, you chip up the concrete. And that's something that I'll hear a lot. It's people saying they had to chip up the concrete. We didn't want to chip up concrete, so one of the solutions we used was to raise the bathroom floor. Thankfully, our ceiling heights were already pretty high, so when we raised it, it doesn't make the bathroom feel like it's any lower really, but you do have a step up into the bathroom. But we did not chip up our concrete floor. That is our foundation floor, and that's what we used.
Okay. So why is that? Because they had to put like stuff underneath, or what?
Yeah, because you gotta tie into your sewer, and you had to have a certain grade to do that. So they're chipping it up so that they could run it a certain way. So we just went a different route, and then we also raised it up. So, imagine if your waste is leaving the building and it's below here, but your pipe's up here, right? So this time we raise it up, and now the waste can leave out the way it's supposed to go.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
No.
Oh, that's a good thing to know, though. You don't want to mess with the waste.
You've got to have a waste right. You won't pass inspections.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And then what's the next phase after that?
Now we get into framing. Okay. So we're going to frame everything up. And if I'm not mistaken with this one, a part of the reason why we got done so fast is we did a few things as like the permitting process as we were going through that we could get away with doing without getting in trouble. Like, we're not going to close up any walls or anything, but what started framing once, we were going through the cycles and everything looked good, then he knew like, oh, I can start framing now. I can start working on this part of it. But yeah, just don't close anything up.
Don't close anything up. Okay, so you had to tear out all the previous walls that were already there?
I wish I had pictures, but I think that we did not necessarily have to tear out all the walls, but we did have to frame in front of them and put insulation because that's a garage and it was not insulated.
Okay.
Right. And then it's the back side of our fireplace that wasn't being used is also on the garage. So that's one of the drawbacks of converting a garage is you're design restricted in some ways, right? Because whatever you have on the other side, that's impacting. So that our fireplace was definitely impacting our garage design. I mean, it sticks out like, I don't know, 2 feet or something, the backside of the garage. And we went through all the scenarios of how to deal with it or how to get rid of it. And, you know, of course, on my design side, I was like, get rid of it. Let's do it. And it was like, I am not shipping out this. You are going to have to live with this. And really, as soon as I thought about what the work it would take to get rid of it, I conceded, like, yeah, we just have to frame around it and live with this kind of weird, like, display thing of a sheetrock backside of the fireplace. So that was one thing. So with framing, we framed around that fireplace too.
Okay. And then I know before you had said focus on soundproofing. Is there a certain like insulation or like, I guess, wall that you have to put, or wall, I guess, material that you put up that's favorable for soundproofing?
Exactly. So especially with the garage conversions that share a wall with a primary residence, you want to stagger your studs, one, or you want to use quiet board. And we haven't had any experience with quiet board. We didn't even know about it when we were building. But when we built the ADU, I found out about it. It is super expensive. Oh. So it's not something that you just like use everywhere. I mean, I think when we got quotes for it, it might have been like 3 times more than standard sheetrock. So it's like sheetrock, but it's a special sheetrock. Okay. And so I wonder if anyone's ever had any experience with it. I'd love to hear about it. I read about it, and it sounds like most people felt like it helped when installed correctly. So there might even be some things to the way that you tricks to installing it, but definitely stagger the studs because you want to prevent, basically like create an air gap so that sound can't get through to the primary residence and vice versa. Right.
Okay. And once you have the soundproofing, the insulation, the framing, and everything, is that what's the next step after that? Paint?
Yeah, painting. Yeah, so you're gonna tape in mud. Did you install your sheetrock yet? You install your sheetrock. Oh. That's after you're framed up and you pass inspection and stuff. Now you're gonna install your sheetrock and taping in muddy. Real fun stuff.
Taping? Okay, wait, back up. You said inspections. So there's certain inspections you have to get done at each phase before you can move on.
Yes, okay. And you can check your city's website. Sometimes they have it listed where the inspections need to occur at. Okay. And if you're unclear, just call your building department or your previous inspector or somebody, you know, someone in there, and they'll explain it to you. Again, if you're in SAC, you're in luck because they're super nice.
So are they booked out pretty far, or can you just, like, when you're done, you call them and they're there within like 48 hours?
I try to always book them, and they have an online portal, so you log into your portal and you select the inspection you want. And I always try to do it 2 days in advance, but there were times when I had to do it like the day before because something happened and we're like, okay, we're going to push through, and they were available and they came. So SAC, and I think that really has a lot to do with Sacramento. And not every, I've heard other stories that sometimes, you know, you have to wait around for an inspector. Yeah. Here, we just like flew through those inspections, and I schedule them. They come the next day or whenever I schedule them. Schedule on Friday, they'd be there on Monday. So amazing.
And you have to, I'm guessing you have to pay for each of these inspections as you do them, or is it all upfront cost, or how does that work?
That was all inside of your permit fees.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't ever really have to pay for anything again, except with the ADU duplex when we resubmit it past the cycles. So you have like 3 cycles, and or you have a certain number of cycles based on the comments. So if you fix something, then you don't don't have to go through a cycle. But if they catch something else, then you have to go through another cycle. Things like that happen. If you go past 3, then you have to pay for them to review it, like $170 or something like that in Sacramento. And that's pretty standard everywhere, that if they give you a certain number of cycles and inspection included in your permit fees. So no, you don't have to pay for every inspection. Just that one time you pay for your permits, and then that's it.
Okay, cool. And then you said, so mudding and taping, is that something you can just DIY, or is that something you need to subcontract out?
You could totally DIY. It's gonna take time. It is very tedious. What should I say? Out of all the things that you could do, though, it's the least risk. Get to taping and mudding and get, comfortable with sanding. You watch some videos on taping and mudding and sanding. That's what you, and it's just a time thing. Let it dry fully. Do some more, apply some more. It's actually my strength. I don't know why I got good at it, but I don't love
I'm going to invite you over, and we'll open a bottle of wine, and we'll just have, like, a mudding and taping party.
I don't have it. It was like when Noah figured out that I could do it, he was like, Kisha will do it. So with the ADU, we kind of joked that I was going to do the taping and mudding, and once the building was up, I was like, there is no way I can tape and mud this building. That's not happening unless you want us to be here for another 6 months. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So for a smaller garage conversion, definitely you can handle the taping and mudding. It's just a time thing. Like, you're going to take your time and do it. The finishes. So if we actually got quotes for it anyway, because it is a job, depending on the finish that you want, that's how the cost is going to go up, right? So if you want that texture, if you're okay with the texture, you can live with that, then it's going to be cheaper than if you want that super fine walls, smooth walls, which is what I always wanted. So
finishes, and is finishes, is that the last phase?
Next, after you do your sheetrock, and then you just make sure, we install the floor, and then we put our appliances in, I think. Yeah.
So finishes, floor, appliances.
Yes.
Okay. So the electrical, plumbing, that all comes before, that comes between framing and installation, right?
That was with our framing.
Okay.
Except like our tie-ins, we waited so our boxes, thank you, go back. So at framing, we dealt with plumbing and electrical boxes. Okay. So they were installed even if everything wasn't hardwired up. Wires were run though, because once we put that wall up, right? So thank you for backing up. Once you sheetrock, it's kind of a pain to get your wires run. So yeah, everything was ran, and the tie-in happened. So we tied into the main panel once. There was a point in the inspection process, and then we tied in. And it was like right before our final inspection that we tie in for that last part, because we needed the power to be all good so that we can pass inspection for our mini splits, which if I were someone, go with the mini splits. That's the way to go for your heating and cooling in an ADU.
I've seen those in ADUs before. Is that just like that white rectangular thing that's on there? Okay. Do you put one in each room, or do you think it could heat or cool the whole ADU?
No, so it could. So like the studio just has one of those little units inside of it, but the duplex each room has one. That's code. You have to have them. In the kitchen and the living room share one, right? There isn't one in the bathroom. You don't have to have one in the bathroom. Okay. And it really does heat up the space quickly, but it also allows you to target the space. And so you're not like, with our house, our heat is on now and the whole house is being heated, but we're only in like 3 rooms. Right. So that's such a waste. So it's much more energy efficient. Okay.
And then, so you got your finishes, you passed last inspection, you put in your appliances, your flooring. Now it's time to rent out?
Now it's time to rent out. So usually I handle like painting and like the finishing part. That's where I'm going to be working the most. Once he gets that, taping and mudding done, now it's all me. Then I'm also at that same time, the thing is listing, I think for the garage, I just took a picture of, we had done a tile backsplash and the 2 fridges, and I already had it posted coming soon. Like, so I'm already on it. I'm ahead of it because I know, and also it gives us that kind of date that we have to hit in order to get done. Mm-hmm. As it turned out, my sister was the first resident, and so I didn't have to rent it at all. We had someone there for like the whole year once it was completed being built. So
that's good. Yeah, that's nice.
It was,
it's a good way to start out, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's a good way to slow your way in. Ease your way in.
And if you build one, the same thing will happen.
Yeah.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. And during all these phases, is like, what were like the things that, looking back now, you would have done differently, or that you recommend someone else doing differently?
So I'm always hung up on the windows in either of the places. The placement of the windows is a big deal. Oh, this is a big one. Think about where the person's, because we're really big on outdoor spaces and making sure each person has a patio, but also where their garbage is going to go. Where are you going to put their garbage cans? Do you want them to share with the main house? Think if you're not there, who's going to take the lead on making sure that garbage gets to the curb and gets pulled back up? So the little kind of logistical things like that, put some thought into that, because later on, like with the ADU duplex, it was kind of a pain. And even though I had been calling them throughout the builds, it took me a while to get the setup that we wanted. And with this garage, we still are kind of figuring out what's the best setup that works for when we're not here. So right now we can drag the garbage out for our renter that's a traveler. But when we leave, do I want the main house to be responsible for ensuring that her garbage gets to the curb? What if she, I don't know, throws a party or something and has a bunch of trash? Why would they be responsible for it? Right. It's little things like that. So that's what I would say. Think about those logistic things, the trash and stuff, and the window placement and light. I mean, with a garage, you're restricted, right? We have this kind of set footprint that we can't change. We got to maximize privacy, maximize the light that we let in, all of that stuff. But it's a little dark at night. But I really think it's the best that it could be. It's just, something that I would always pay attention to if I were someone building an ADU, is try to maximize that light. I'm trying to think in the garage if there's anything else.
I know all appliances have to be electrical, right?
Say that again?
All appliances have to be electrical in a garage conversion?
That's true. And so you can see where if we were capped at that 400 amps, even in the new build, in order to meet California's Title 24 standards, a lot of our stuff is already energy efficient, but it is all electric. So being capped at 400 amps was a little bit of a job for us to search and make sure that we purchased the right fridge. We have a dishwasher, an 18-inch dishwasher in both units in the ADU duplex. We have washers and dryers in all of our ADUs. We always have washers and dryers, especially if you're targeting travel nurses or medical professionals. They got to clean their scrubs all the time. And so even though they're small places, even though they're small places, I definitely think it's one of the reasons why, even though we have a smaller unit, we still get interest because it's a fully stocked. You don't have to go and wash your stuff somewhere else. So we're lucky enough to get the washer and dryer inside of the units. But if you don't have that option, at least make it really close by, but make a washer and dryer available if you think you're going to rent to a traveler, or if you want the option to.
Yeah, that ties back into phase one. Like you said, know who you're building it for and make sure the regulations are going to match the needs of the person that you're building it for. Because like you said, I have no idea what Rocklands is, but I'm going to go find out now. But what if it was only 200 or something, and then now I'm wanting to do a junior ADU and a regular ADU? I'm not going to have enough power to do both, especially if my target audience is going to be traveling nurses. So that's definitely something I'm going to have to look into. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And with ADU regulation and legislation, if I've learned nothing since 2017, is it's always changing. And even if it turned out that Rockland doesn't have has something really restrictive, you would just challenge it. I wouldn't take no. I would just, start talking and figuring out who do you talk to so you can challenge that, because of course that would make your job or your right harder to capture, right? You can't really build this ADU, the second one, if, even though it's your right to do it, if you can't get the power back there. So don't take no for an answer.
I love it. Yes. And oh my gosh, I was just gonna ask you something, and then I just forgot. It was
Then
such
I went
a good
on
question
my rant about persistence.
No, okay. Well, if it comes back, I'll try to remember. Okay, so you rented it out. Now, I can't remember if I asked you this at the beginning. What do your cash flow numbers look like for your one in Sacramento?
So in Sacramento, without the main house being rented at all, we're at 5,369 or something like that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Kisha! That's amazing.
It's crazy. And so one of the things that, because all our kids are grown, Noah works remote. I'm a new realtor. I'm just starting. We're mobile. We're willing to go under the radar. So to pay for this, we didn't have the money. So that's one thing. We did not have the money. You could take a HELOC or equity line. You could do all of those things. We weren't willing to. So we used whatever savings and cash flow we had on hand and 0% credit cards. It's not something I'm going to say is for everyone, but it is a strategy. And so we did that. Word of caution, I would say, if there was one thing we could have done differently, is I would have waited for as long as possible to start pulling on those 0% credit cards. Right. But at the time when we started building, the economy in the world kind of seemed like it was going crazy, and I was afraid that they would pull the credits, right? You were hearing talk about credit being pulled, and the same thing can happen with the HELOC or equity line, right? Yeah. Learned that. So we pulled it really quickly. We took the money even before we needed it. So if I could have done that differently, I would have waited a little longer, so it would have given us more time. And I brought that up because sometimes I hear people and they're like, I just can't afford it. I can't. I don't believe that you're going to save all this money by not having a cup of coffee, but if you want to buy one, but maybe not a cup of coffee and dinner, there are some things that you can, you got to give and take. You can't have it all. For us, we will be living in our van for the next year, and we'll be traveling, and we're looking forward to it. We've lived in a van before. It's our camper van. It's tricked out. It's got everything you need in it. But that's a part of our strategy for if we need to pay back debt quickly, and that's one of the ways. So none of these spaces that we built will we be living in. So we will be living in our luxurious Ford E350.
And you guys, I saw her van. It's badass. After I saw your van, you got me thinking. I was like, ooh, I need to go find a van. I need to go remodel a van and live in it, because I'm all for giving up everything right now so that way I could live the life of my dreams later on. That delayed gratification, but also to have that freedom of just living in a van and going and traveling. That's amazing. Right. You guys are amazing.
Thank you. I mean, it's a sacrifice, but it's also an adventure, so it doesn't feel as bad, right? It's both. It's, a little bit of, some nights aren't that cool in the van. We did it before we got to Sacramento, but 90% it's a blast. I'm just excited, and it's not one of those awesome Mercedes ones. It's a Ford E350, but we can't stand up in it. But that's another part. Yeah, it's another part of our strategy not to overspend on other things in order for us to be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that. And how much did it cost to build the garage ADU conversion?
About $50,000.
$50,000. Okay. And then what?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask. And the duplex?
Oh, that one, I'm saying on the high end 180. I actually was working on the numbers for my event tomorrow, the virtual meetup. And so as I'm seeing them, I really think I'm pretty close. There was a point where I was tracking it really closely because I wasn't a part of the build at that point. And then when I started to do more in the build, then I just was like, I lost it and I wasn't really paying attention. But some interesting numbers, like we spent $40,000 at Home Depot. We spent about $9,000 on lumber, another $8,000 on the siding. We went with it's James Hardy siding, and so you paint it, but it's just easier to install and it's durable. It's like concrete. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it is like it's a concrete siding. So that was one of our bigger expenses, but still not that bad. I think I said like 8,000, a little bit over 8,000 for the whole duplex for the siding. So I'm going through the numbers now. So I'm 180,
That is still amazing for a duplex. You still can't find that in California, at least in Sacramento.
You can't.
Wow. Well, oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking us through every single phase of your project and just going through and like sharing what you would have done differently so other people can, I guess, prevent that from happening to themselves. I mean, I feel like you have just done an amazing job with just not only excelling in building ADUs, but sharing your journey. I mean, I stalked your Instagram and went through all your videos. If you guys haven't checked out her Instagram, go stalk her page because like all your videos are amazing, and I just am so grateful that you're willing to share it with all of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Miranda. I really enjoyed being on the live and meeting you, and I love stalking your videos.
Hold on, sorry, what was that? It accidentally connected to my AirPods.
Yeah, no problem. I really love your content and all the interviews you're doing, so keep it up. It's really inspiring to me when I watch you. I was just like, I'm going to start talking to people too, because it's the more I talk and the more I hear from other people, I'm learning, and so I really appreciate what you're doing too.
Oh, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing tomorrow with your Zoom Live?
Yeah, so tomorrow at 6:30, my husband and I will be on hand to answer questions. We're going to do a virtual meetup. So I'm going to do a short presentation and then open it up to other people who just want to ask me some more specific questions about our 5 builds. And I hope to have a builder there. I've been talking to a couple of them, and let's just see who shows up tomorrow.
That's awesome. And what time is that?
Tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. So
I will be there.
The link is in my bio, Mellor Moves, at Mellor Moves, and sign up there. I try to keep it in the story too, but that's where you can find out more information.
And then if people want to meet you in person, you're also speaking at the She Invests meetup, right, in April?
Yes. Is that April 4th?
I think it's the first, I'm not sure what date it is, but it's the first Thursday of April here in Roseville.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll be there too if anyone's interested. And I love talking about this stuff. If you want to DM me, this is like, I got a question the other day about something that had been on my mind, but I hadn't taken the time to like really look into it. And the question spurred like hours of me like going through academic journals. So I really appreciate it when someone, because then I learned so much in that moment and actually cleared up a lot of information, a lot of questions I had about ADUs and their appraisal values. So shoot me a message, DM me, whatever, set up a call with me. This is the thing I love doing the most. Talking about ADUs.
Well, I can definitely tell you have a passion for it just by the way you talk about it and how excited you are about sharing it with others. So thank you so much again for coming on and just your time and just being willing to share everything. And I am excited for your Zoom meeting tomorrow. So like she said, if you guys haven't signed up already, go check it out. Her link's on her page, Mellor Moves on Instagram.
Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.